I'm excited about this one. I hope you guys are too. This is the 11th model from BUL Armory to be on this channel. Very fortunate to have that opportunity. We've got the TAC Pro 5-inch tabletop review and field strip coming up next on And you may be wondering why 11 models. Well, one, they're great guns. Two, I've been really enjoying doing the side-by-side comparisons over on the other channel, and did recently the 4 1/4 inch TAC and the 4 1/4 inch EDC. Now this is the newer model of what used to be called the TAC Pro CS2 TAC. I forget the older nomenclature, but the older model is my winter carry gun, 4 1/4 inch with aluminum frame and a shorter dust cover. The TAC itself provides a steel frame and a full-length dust cover, and that nose weight out front definitely lends itself to range shooting. It adds a little bit of extra weight you may want it for carry, but it makes for a flatter shooting gun because you've got all this weight out here helping fight muzzle flip and making for a smoother shooting experience. However, 5-inch 9mm used to be one of my favorites. I recently reviewed another one and really enjoyed getting back into that slide rhythm. Now, let me know in the comments if you guys know what I'm talking about. But when you shoot guns of a certain barrel length and slide length, you begin to notice the rhythm that they have. Just between the amount of mass that's reciprocating and the speed at which it reciprocates. Something about 5-inch guns is just... 5-inch guns are a more casual, more comfortable shooting experience, I guess you could say. You don't have to put as much effort into keeping steady. Now, of course, 4 1/4 inch guns like this can be run well, and I've spent so much time with 4 1/4 that it's become my favorite. But I wanted to give 5 a try, and on these BUL Armories, you notice the slides all have these cuts up top on the newer ones. That's to make room for their porting. So if I'm going to go 5-inch, might as well go ported. That's why we've got this guy. To give you a look at what's in the box, we have a cardboard protective box over our awesome case. I love these cases that come with BUL Armories. They used to be gray and now they're black. Up top, you've got room for plenty of magazines, which is good for this gun in particular. As a competition-oriented gun, it comes with not 1, not 2, not 3, but 4 magazines. We have a safety divider here, our gun with 1 magazine in it. Here are the 3 other magazines. I'll show you examples when I pull one out of the gun. Then, in another zippered pouch, well, below that, of course, a durable chamber flag, great for people who go to ranges that require that. And then these Velcro straps that allow you to configure this bag to hold 1 or 2 guns, or however you want it. Inside this is the goodie bag, and I love these bags. I've reused them before. We've got the manual, we've got some decals, we have our metal chamber brushes and cleaning rod. We get a patch. We get another recoil assembly, this one a 9-pounder, in case you want to tune to your ammo. We get the disassembly tool, and then another pouch. And inside this is the BAO optics system. And I've explained this in other videos, but you see we already get the plates required. We also have the other mainspring housing pin in case you want to take the magazine well off. But the way these plate systems work is you notice that mouth there, that opening, that sits on a raised portion of the slide. The advantage with that system is that is going to take any of the shear force from recoil, the gun being jarred or dropped, etc., which means the shear force is not on the screws, which is one of the major weaknesses in most optics mounting setups, in that screws are meant to provide a clamping force. They are not designed to resist a shear force, that is a force from the side. If you look at your optic mounted on the gun and think about when the optic wants to shift, how the screw can resist that, it's purely by, well, it's resisting what's called a shear force. Next, we'll take a quick look through the manual. I go through the manual for 2 reasons. First and foremost, to show the YouTube overlords that disassembling this pistol is basic end user level safety and function of the gun. The other one is to take a look at how well the company wants you to understand the product. A good manual shows the company really cares about that, and unfortunately, this is one of the areas where I think BUL Armory could improve things. Their manuals while covering the basics, are kind of light compared to others. For example, this one is not mentioning anything about plated ammunition with the ported barrel, and as many influencer have recently rediscovered, since ported barrels are nothing new. Proving my point, here's a BUL Armory from 1999, and look at those ports. And yes, it was a double stack 1911. Neither of these current trends are anything new. It's just a return because there have been advancements, as you can probably immediately tell by looking at this thing, and they're a joy to shoot. Returning to my point about plated bullets in ported barrels, when the ports are cut into where the rifling is, you do run the risk of the plate being shaved off the bullet as it passes by. Plated ammunition has become more and more popular. I believe it's simpler to make, possibly, than jacketed ammunition. Blazer brass, for example, is plated. Shooting that through these guns, you run the chance of some of that jacket or that plating being shaved, exiting out the port at a high velocity into a random direction, which could be unpleasant, but also impacting the bullet's balance, causing some accuracy issues. But I didn't see anything about that in here. It's just the bare basic level of knowledge you would need about one of these things. I can somewhat rationalize that for BUL Armory, because BUL Armory is not typically a brand that anyone new to the platform gets to. This is kind of the, oh yeah, I got in on the staccato thing, and then I learned my lesson, and now I know what I want, I'm ready for a real gun, and so they go for something like a BUL Armory. And yes, that was a little jab at the staccato crowd. Sorry guys, I can't justify a staccato. It doesn't make sense to me. They cost more for specs that are less ideal than what we're looking at here. And for like the lightweight carry gun, the BUL Armory Ultralight is lighter, higher capacity, and less expensive. So why would I even look at a staccato? Alright, with that done, I'm going to cut the warning tag off of here, which fortunately some folks haven't followed, and that's saying if you're unsure of handling it, seek professional guidance. Now on to the beauties of this gun. Oh, that was smooth. Alright, with the slide lock to the rear, we'll check for magazine release or ejection. Flipping the gun upside down, hit the button, and you can see we only have release. Not a problem though with these slick-sided magazines in a polymer grip. The witness windows on the back are not my favorite. They're the low, medium, and full type. I'd rather have a per round count, but that's the way it is. The magazines for BUL Armory, however, are different than your standard double stack 1911, aka 2011. That can be good and bad. It's good in that they are higher capacity, usually by 1 round. They are less expensive, generally, depending on where you find them. The bad is the finding them. Fortunately, BUL Armory USA keeps plenty in stock here in the US. I've ordered from them multiple times, never had an issue with inventory. You notice that this model comes with the aluminum base plates, not the polymer ones that are on the other models. That adds a little bit of weight, ensures for a little bit of extra help in getting gravity going to drop those magazines. Also gives you something a little more to grab onto to pull. Speaking of pull, you notice we have an indentation there that lines up with the indentation on the magazine well. So if you've gotten to the point of owning a BUL Armory but still don't know how to fix a Type 3 malfunction, you've got something to get a little extra grip on there. I'm going to jump straight into trigger talk on this one because, wow, it's a nice gun. Man, did you guys hear that? That is a tight fit. Alright. Now 1911 triggers are usually pretty good. BUL Armory triggers are usually pretty good. What do we get here? Light take up to a wall. Clean break, just enough over travel to not throw the shot. Our reset. Short, kicks you just in front of that wall, but easy to get back on it for another clean break. Likely to be a good shooter. As I said, this is my 11th modern BUL Armory. It's my 12th total BUL Armory, so I'm a bit familiar with them. Now on to our regular look tabletop view. Come up front and you see that nicely polished bull barrel with the target crown. That crown, the recessing there of the rifling away from the edge. In fact, the barrel even sits back just a touch from the muzzle to help protect it from any impacts should there be a fall. We have a full-length guide rod. Side to frame, almost no movement, very tight. We have a little bit of corners edged off to make holstering a little bit easier. Plenty of rail space underneath. It's funny that a 5-inch gun now seems like such a long gun when only a couple years ago things were 4, 4.25, 4.5, and the occasional 5. It wasn't as rare to see a 5-inch gun as it is now. You can see our slide serrations, these are the same that are used on all of the current production BUL Armories. They really do grip. Work very nicely. Very tasteful slide with just TAC, 3 letters is all that's on the side there. So those of you that don't like the billboard, don't have to worry about it. A little bit of texture on the front of the trigger guard for those that do the European grip style. You can see we have a double undercut here and a nice rounding. Having taken this SAS2 grip model into different courses and used over and over again, I've never had a Glock knuckle symptom. Very smooth and nicely done there. The texture is that fissure texture. And we've got texturing on our slide lock and release lever as well. Texturing on the front strap is the checkering kind, which works to give you traction in all directions, so no need to argue about stippling there. We have an aluminum magazine well, which as you can see is flared nicely all the way around. And of course that is removable, and they do have other larger, heavier models made of different materials in case you really want that extra weight at the bottom or really need help getting magazines into guns. There's that same checkering on the back strap. You can see we have an enlarged hump for our grip safety, and the beaver tail comes nice and high. Safety, very clean off and on. Check for play on the ambidextrous. None. Very nicely fit. Speaking of fitment, looking at that back end there, I know a lot of 1911 guys like to look at the slide to frame fit there. And not getting any movement, which would explain, again, that very smooth motion, and also why it's pressing oil out of the back each time I do it. The sights here are blacked out, serrated front and rear. You notice they're a little bit taller. That's so you can still use your sights when an optic is mounted. I can demonstrate that with my 4.25 inch TAC. You can see the sights through there and still see the Veridian RFX 35, which I have purchased another one of those to mount on this guy so that it is a true side-by-side fair comparison. Same optic. I hate that matching optics adds a lot of expense to doing these comparisons, but I think it's the most fair way to do it since each optic has its own weight, its own chance of catching brass, and its own, of course, user experience on the shooting side. Coming around the right side of the gun, it's your standard 1911-ish thing. Now we will field strip, and with that full-length guide rod, it's a good thing they included the tool. Is the tool going to fit this time or not? Let's find out. Now, field stripping 1911s, there's more than one way to do it. Used to always get commenters arguing on which way was which. I showed you in the manual, BUL Armory's instructions are to lock the guide rod, then remove the slide, and then disassemble things. The other way to do it is to take the slide off first. I agree with the other way in this case, especially since the little index hole for the guide rod, which you may or may not be able to see, I can just barely see it down in there, is angled at such that it's going to be tough to get the tool in there. We'll see which one works, but the manual says to do it that way. We're going to start that way. So we've checked for clear, we've locked the slide to the rear, which obviously also helps with checking for clear, and remove the magazine with the slide locked all the way to the rear. We're going to take what looked like a little Allen key that came with this. Let's see if I can do this through the camera. That would be magical. And we're trying to fish that in there, and that's not going to work for me. I'm not going to get that in there. The other method is to use a paper clip, which I've done in the past. This time I think I'll just demonstrate taking the slide off first. To do that, we're going to want to move the slide back until this little hump, little cutout, is over the slide release there, and then push from the other side to take our slide stop release slash takedown lever out. And these are such nice fleshly fit that you may need something to push. Now we can take our slide off, and you can see that beautiful steel frame. And big old long dust cover, man. This 5-inch looks I mean, 5 inches was the standard 1911 length, but it just seems out of place. Now we're going to have to deal with that hole. So you can see that little hole is back here. We're going to have to compress the spring and slide that tool in. Like so. That is going to keep this captured for us so that we can then work it all out. Like so. All steel, of course, full-length guide rod. It's got some heft to it. Knock our link forward, and we can bring the barrel out of the slide and take a look inside the slide. Beautiful. A little bit of chattering marks there, but otherwise gorgeous. And you can see that, yes, this is what is often referred to as a 70s series, meaning that there is no firing pin safety. Do not know if the firing pin is titanium or steel, but this is kind of one of those guns that you don't drop anyways. Taking a look at our barrel, you can see the V8 porting. One of the patrons asked about the benefits of these smaller holes versus the bigger chunk porting that we've seen. And I do not know for sure yet, but the logic would serve that with this V8 style porting, smaller holes, you're going to get higher pressure pushing out of them, so more force pushing downward, and that it's a staged experience. You know, it activates in stages and releases in stages as the bullet passes, versus the chunk porting, which is sort of a big old dump of pressure, which I don't know if this is going to be smoother than the chunk port. I think it would be, but it's hard to tell because I can't fairly A/B test. I don't know of a company that both chunk ports and V8 or V6 ports. Usually most companies have chosen one or the other. You can see that slight ramp on the end there. That's what's serving to help replace the barrel bushing. Everything is nicely lubricated. Big old fat feed ramp. And now we'll do our chamber fit. For chamber fitment, as I've done for the last few years, going to be using a piece of Liberty Ammunition Civil Defense. This nickel plating is corrosion resistant, which is great for random handling all the time like this. It's also friction reducing. Dropping in, listening for a plunk like that, and then looking to see how much brass beyond the shoulder is exposed. Of course, a little bit on a 1911 has to be exposed where the extractor goes, and we've got a little bit under the feed ramp, basically like standard. With that in there, you also want to give it a little twist, see if you feel any burrs or roughness. Sometimes there's something in there from manufacturing that needs to be cleaned out, but if you've cleaned it and you still feel roughness, you might have a bad chamber. We have caught a couple on this channel. I will now inverse the process while I tell you about what you can expect to see in the range video. Starting off with cold shots, absolute first shots through the gun. Now I will be mounting an RFX 35 to this, which means I'll need to check 0, so those will be my first shots. Then we'll do full magazine plus 1, see how the gun runs fully stuffed. Take it to the trademark What's for Dinner table to see what the gun will eat. Laughing at myself there for having that backwards. Which this is meant to be a competition gun. I'll probably run some defensive loads through it just to see. One of the fun things to experiment with on ported guns is how the gassier ammunition, the same stuff that tends to be a little snappier in hand, also tends to give you the more effect with the port. So that'll be interesting to test. You guys, of course, will have that 90-degree view to be able to witness for yourselves how flat the gun remains or does not remain in my hand through that process. Then take it to the spinner for sights and trigger control. Of course, using a red dot means we're not testing the gun's sights, but it'll also be indicative of the total energy on target. We do have a 5-inch barrel, which is extra long. However, we are also venting some of those gases. Oh, you know what? Before I do this and get myself in a jam, let me take that lever out. Oh no, I got it stuck again. There we go. Something to remember. I got that little tool in there, keeping the spring pressure back. And if I couldn't get the tool in while everything was in the gun, I'm probably not going to be able to get it out. So I'm going to go ahead and let all this rest in place beforehand. After the spinner, back to the paper for some practical accuracy, which is 5 shots from 7 yards at a 1-inch square. I find that to be a good measurement. Before giving you my concluding thoughts. That, however, of course, is not all that I'll be doing with this gun on video. Everything works. We'll be A/B testing it against the 4 1/4 version of the same thing, looking to see if that extra 3/4 inches of slide and barrel, and if those ports really make a difference. I think it'll be an interesting side-by-side to do, especially with having the exact same optics mounted on there. If you're curious about this RFX 35, you can check out my Viridian Optics guide over on my site. If you'd like to know the specs or deeper details about this thing, that of course is also on my site. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you on the range.